Hello, my name's David. I'm the subject leader for art history at the Sixth Form College. I'm just going to tell you a bit about the course and give you some things to think about, which hopefully will get you interested. Art history is taught in the art and design department at college. So even though it has the word history in the title, and you would have thought it does have lots of connections with history A level, other things like English literature, philosophy, those kind of subjects. We do actually teach the subject as an art and design A level. Just to get the boring technical stuff out of the way early on, the official name for the art history A level that we do at the Sixth Form College is actually Critical and Contextual Studies, and that's one of the titles on the art and design A level specification for EDUCAS, which is part of the Welsh Board. And what that means is it's an art and design A level alongside all the other art and design A levels that we do at the Sixth Form College. So it's an equivalent of fine art, photography, graphic design, textiles, and so on. But we take a slightly different approach both to an art and design A level and actually to some extent art history as well. One thing to make clear about this A level is we don't expect you to know what art history is. I'll talk about the sort of skills that you need. But we assume you don't know anything about the subject, so we'll introduce you to some of the key works in the history of art, and we'll get you thinking about the skills you require to be a good art historian. So what are the basic skills we'd like you to bring onto the course? Well, the first thing to say, we don't expect you to have the traditional art skills to do this subject, even though it's an art and design A level. You don't need to be able to draw or paint. We do drawings and paintings from time to time, but that's just another way of thinking about the subject. You're not really assessed on the quality of those pieces. The main skill you need is writing. You need to be comfortable with writing. So the entry requirements are a 4 or preferably a 5 in English language. We don't expect you to have research skills, we'll help you with that, but I think one of the basic skills that you do need, or basic kind of drives on this course, is an interest in art. You need to be interested in finding out more about it and asking questions about it. An interest in art history doesn't mean that you know all the answers, and in fact one of the key skills of being a good art historian is about asking questions. For example, why is this little figurine, which would fit into the palm of your hand, and was found in Willendorf in Austria in the early 20th century, so important to the history of art? Who are these two people, painted by the Dutch artist Jan van Eyck in the early 15th century? Are they a couple? Is one the father and the other the daughter? Why does the man hold his hand up in that way? Why does the woman put her hand to her belly? Is she pregnant? Or is she just holding up her dress as though she's about to move off the picture? Why are there some clogs abandoned in the foreground? And a little dog there as well? What's in the reflection in the mirror right between the couple? And how did Jan van Eyck manage to paint this such incredibly luminous colours and bright tones so long ago? Who is our mutt? And why is this one of the most important objects in 20th century art? Some questions in art might seem easier to understand, but are often just as difficult to answer. In this poster made by the Guerrilla Girls in the 1980s, they're looking at the role of women in the history of art. Indeed, that's the main focus of their work. The truth is that women have always made art. But were you to go to a gallery such as the Metropolitan Museum in New York, as is mentioned in this poster, or pick up a textbook on the history of art, that might seem far from the case. Why is that? Why do we see so many pictures of women, but but we don't see so many pictures by women. Right, so you need to be interested in art, you need to be willing to ask questions about art. But what are the actual tasks that we do on the course? Well, the tasks we do in the first term, there's lots of them we do together. We do a timeline, we do a library induction, we go on gallery visits and so on. And then we have classes where we work our way through the history of art. We have a theme of the human form just to give us a bit of focus. And then you sort of jot down ideas and so on. But then once that's done, you present some of the work that you've been discussing in these black page books. So it's neatly presented, written responses with visual elements as well. So as you can see, presentation skills are important, and the amount of writing is fairly brief at this stage. So once we've all got a basic understanding of the history of art, and you've got a range of key works that you've looked at and analysed and so on, the main bulk of what we do in art history is a series of personal projects, both in the first year and the second year. And the way you document that is slightly different to in the black page books. Here's some examples of research books here. So using white pages, it's not quite as neatly presented perhaps, but it's very dynamic, lots going on. There's visual stuff, there's visual presentation of writing, and there's responses. There's images of the work that the student's interested in. As you might be able to tell, this is a project done by a first year student on Japanese art, a particular type of art coming out of a city that's now known as Tokyo in the early 1800s that became very influential on Western art in the late 1800s. Here's another first year project, this time on feminist art. And you can see a work on the left-hand side by American artist called Barbara Kruger, who was of particular interest to this student. And on the right is her working out ideas for her visual response to the work of that artist. So again, you can see images, hand-drawn images, photographs, reproductions of the work by the artist that the student is interested in, highlighted annotations and bits of information that are useful for this student to develop her project. In terms of topics for these personal projects, I think one thing that's important to make clear is even though we have discussed the history of art through depictions of the human form, and there's things that we've all looked at together, and we'll do that again in the second year, the actual themes that students choose are very diverse, and they're not necessarily things we've covered as a group. So there's something that's of particular interest to you within the field of art and design, and there's enough stuff that you can research on it because that's important, then you can do a project on it. So for example, and outcomes can take a real range of different forms. So I'm going to show the next couple of slides of some outcomes. This is a project, second year project on the Dada movement, and we did discuss Dada, early 20th century art movement. This student was very interested in that, and she was particularly interested in the fact that there was a number of female artists who were part of the movement but hadn't really been given the profile that they deserved. So her focus was on that. And the outcome, as you can see, has got writing and images. And the layout is kind of based on the type of publications that the Dada movement would put out, sort of small run magazines and journals. And so she presented her outcome in that way. In the second year, we broaden out our discussion to include design history. So we look at things like graphic design, product design, and architecture, that sort of thing. And a lot of people, students, have do projects in relation to that area. In this case, this is a project on fashion, which is not something we discuss in any detail. Specifically, it's about a short-lived fashion and music movement called New Romanticism, which was very influential on fashion of the times. It was coming out of the sort of late 70s, early 80s. And what she did was with this outcome is she produced it as a magazine that was in the style of the kind of music magazines and fashion magazines of that time period. But it's not all researching and writing on art history. We do lots of trips and visits throughout the year. In the first term, we go to the Castle Museum in Colchester. That's the photograph of that. And we go to various trips, both locally and nationally and internationally, during the time you're going to be at the Sixth Form College. It's really important and interesting to see artworks at first hand. Because we often work from reproduction, so you don't get a sense of scale or the real sort of material properties of the things you're looking at unless you're standing in front of them. With things like museums, it's always really interesting to see what they've chosen to collect, what artworks, what artifacts, but also, because we're using language, how these things are written about. Obviously in Colchester, we're only 60 miles from one of the world's cultural centres in London, so we do numerous trips down to London, mainly as a department, not necessarily just as art historians. But again, it's really important that students get to have a look at works of art at first hand. And so, for example, at Tate Modern, the Mark Rothko paintings, and getting a sense of the kind of huge scale that these are painted on, which gives you a very different sense to having a look at it even projected onto a screen in a classroom. Art history is a small course, so we do tend to do some of the bigger trips with the rest of the department, but in the summer we take out the minibus and we go to more local places like Norwich and in this case Cambridge. And this is some students from a couple of years ago on the steps of Murray Edwards College, which is an all-female college, which currently houses the largest collection of art by female artists in the country. And also, as a student in the Department of Art and Design, in the second year, you'll have the opportunity to take part in an international trip. So in recent years, we've been to Paris, we've been, as you can see, Barcelona, New York City, and again, great opportunity to experience a new culture, but also to see some of the key works of art in the flesh, as it were. So going to exhibitions is important, as I'm sure you can tell. What's it like to put on an exhibition yourself? In the summer term, each student chooses a work from one of the A-level shows, so from fine art, graphics, photography, textiles and so on, and that goes into our art trail. So each student chooses the work of art and writes a text panel. You should be able to see below each work is one of those text panels, but that's not all we do, because another thing we do as the part of the art trail is each student contributes to an art installation, which normally goes again in the social space in the pavilion. So what you can see here is a work that's a combination of different elements designed and created by each of the art history students involved in the art trail that year. And these are just some examples of the individual elements from that particular installation. So it's a response to an element of the work that the students chose, and it could be a shape, it could be a colour, it could be a little detail. And then we document the art trail. So this is one student's evidence of taking part in designing and organising the art trail. So on the left we've got photographs of the installation of the exhibition, and all good exhibitions need a poster. So some students designed the poster on the right, and we also made some stickers to give to students to advertise the trail as well. Now we're nearly done, but earlier on I said I would get the boring technical stuff out of the way first, but I lied. Just to give you an overview of the structure of the course, there are two components: personal investigation and the externally set assignment, which in inverted commas is your exam. The component 1, personal investigation, which is, as you can see on the right, 60% of your A-level mark for art history. We start that in June of year 1, and we do various tasks, but mainly it's working independently in research books, as I've shown you, and we finish that at the end of January in year 2, so it's a long project. Okay, so you'll be producing a A3 book with documentation of the stuff we do as a group, and I showed you some examples of that. The stuff for the art trail is in that book. Research books, you've seen examples of that from the first year. Second year it's the same. Lots of interesting and dynamic explorations of your theme visually and written down, and then a final piece or pieces which can be both visual and written, or you can integrate the two together. So for example, a written piece could be, as we saw, a magazine, or there could be something that's purely visual with just a nice, neatly illustrated essay. And component 2, the externally set assignment, is, in inverted commas, the exam for A-level art history. And the way it works is on the 1st of February, or the date nearest to that, which is a college day, you get a paper from the exam board with a set of themes, and you choose one of the themes and you develop another personal project in relation to that theme. So it's the same process as all the other projects we've done throughout the course. So as you can see on the left-hand side, you'll work in a research book. There'll be various tasks to get you thinking about visual and written outcomes, and then at the end of the course and at the end of this component, in 15 hours of supervised time, you'll produce something, probably a final piece or something related to the theme, which is an outcome to the project as a whole. And that's worth 40% of your A-level. Well, thank you very much for going through this tour of art history and what it's all about. I hope you found it interesting. I'm going to leave you with a sculpture by David Shrigley called Really Good, and a quotation which is one of my favourite ones in reference to art, either penned by Bertolt Brecht or Vladimir Mayakovsky or somebody else. Do art history. Bye!